It certainly would have felt better had it happened in October, but still, it is a series win for the Orioles over the Texas Rangers as the O's take 3 of 4. And I'll recap it all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Orioles fans, today is Monday, July 1st, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And as always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. Coming up on today's episode, we're going to talk about an Orioles series win as they took 3 out of 4 from the Texas Rangers this weekend and kind of turned things the other direction after they were in quite a tough stretch last week leading into this series. I'll give you the recap of Friday's win, Saturday's win, and the loss on Sunday Night Baseball and get you everything you need to know from those 3 games. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Tax Network USA. Did you know that it's never too late to resolve your tax issues with the IRS? So don't wait. Reduce your tax debt and get help from a team of licensed tax professionals. Call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. So it's an Orioles series win. Unfortunately, they could not complete the mop, the 4-game sweep, with what would have been the win on Sunday Night Baseball. Got blown out in that one, but taking 3 of 4, especially from the defending world champions, even though they are really struggling a bit so far here in 2024, is still a great series for the O's. We know they opened up this series with a monstrous 11-2 victory on Thursday night. Go back and listen to Friday's episode if you want to hear the recap of that one. But then they followed it up with a couple of nail-biter wins. And it started on Friday night with a 2-1 victory to go up 2-0 in the series. And as I did last Monday, it was a little bit different. The O's had just gotten swept by the Houston Astros. But I'm going to do the weekend recap episode a little bit different. Instead of getting you the 5 things you need to know from each game, I'll get you what went right, what went wrong, and then a shout out to 1 or 2 guys about each game as well. So let's start with the Friday night win, 2-1 over the Rangers. And we begin with what went right. Well, it was Albert Suarez, and not a lot had been going right for Albert Suarez recently for the O's, but he turned things back around on Friday night. His longest start in an Oriole uniform came at a fantastic time. 6 scoreless innings for the veteran righty on Friday, 3 hits, 2 strikeouts, and no walks for Albert Suarez. Now, the Rangers squared him up. There's no doubt about that. They did get 9 hard hit balls against him, but it only ended in 3 hits. And listen, he didn't walk a batter, which was fantastic because the previous 2 starts for Suarez before this one were not good. He combined for only 8 2/3 innings, allowing 8 earned runs on 16 hits with 6 strikeouts to 8 walks and a home run allowed. Then he turns around, 6 scoreless, 3 hits, no walks. And yeah, you probably like more than 2 strikeouts in 6 innings. But when you put up zeros and you're Albert Suarez and you're 35 years old and you're kind of a journeyman at this point, it really doesn't matter as much. He certainly was not dominant at all against that Ranger lineup on Friday night, but he took advantage of the Rangers who have been struggling. They have been this year one of the worst teams when it comes to hitting fastballs in Major League Baseball. And you know what? Albert Suarez, who already throws a lot of fastballs, well, he threw the most fastballs he's thrown to start this year, 63% fastballs from Albert Suarez. He just said, you guys are bad at this. This is also my best pitch. Let's go. And guess what? It worked. First time in his career, he's thrown 6 innings. Now, I still think that when Dean Kramer, and potentially Dean Kramer could be back this week, when Dean Kramer returns, I still think if the O's stick with a 5-man rotation, that Suarez is the one who goes back to the bullpen. I don't think these 6 scoreless change that opinion. But what I will say is, A, this was a great sign for the Orioles rotation to get a start this good. And B, a great sign for the fact that, hey, I have a feeling even if Suarez does go to the bullpen when Kramer returns, I've got a feeling with all these pitching injuries, he's going to have to make some more starts down the stretch for the Orioles. And it's fantastic that he has this in his playbook. Like, hey, I can throw 6 scoreless innings. It's nice to have coming out of your bullpen, even if he does go there. Now, what went wrong for the O's? Well, it was the walks in the bullpen. I mentioned Albert Suarez did not walk anyone. He made it 4 consecutive starts for the Orioles without their starting pitcher walking a batter. Then the bullpen came in and seemingly walked everyone in this game. Yennier Cano came in the 7th. Orioles were leading 2-0, and he's been struggling a little bit lately. He just did not have it at all. Walked the first 2 batters on 9 pitches, and quite frankly, the first pitch he threw was called a strike. It was probably off the outside corner, and then he threw 8 consecutive balls for 2 walks, kind of honed it back in, got a strikeout, then allowed the single, and that loaded the bases with 1 out, and he was pulled. Jacob Webb came in, got a big strikeout. Then he walked the 9-hitter with the bases loaded and 2 outs to make it 2-1, and then got a huge out on a nice play at third base by Ramon Arias to keep it a 2-1 game. Then the Orioles turn it over to CNL Perez. Okay, it's 2-1 in the 8th inning. Well, CNL Perez came in there, and he walked 2 batters in the 8th, still got out of it, but kind of refused to throw a strike. They were lucky to escape this one. Brandon Hyde said it after the game. You cannot walk 5 batters in the late innings of a 2 and 1 run game and generally get away with it. The Orioles somehow did get away with it and won this game 2-1, but they were lucky with those walks to escape with a victory. And that's where my shout out goes. The shout out goes to Craig Kimbrel because he's one of the big reasons the Orioles escaped with this win. Came into the 9th with the 2-1 lead. Kimbrel is a guy who can walk some hitters, and you're like, if he continues this could be a nightmare. Instead, he gets a 1-2-3 inning. Kimbrel gets the first 2 batters to strike out, then gets a ground out to first to end the game. And somewhat surprisingly, despite the fact that it was Kimbrel's 18th save of the season for the Orioles, it was his first 1-run save of the year. Friday night was his 5th opportunity in a 1-run game to get a save. He was 0 for 4 in those previous 4, but this time a little bit different. Came in, got the outs he needed, stuff looked great, and then guess what? He did it again on Saturday. We'll get to Saturday's game coming up next, but it was a 6-5 Orioles lead in the 9th on Saturday. He came right back out there to pitch in his 3rd game in 4 days, and Saturday wasn't as good. He did walk 2 batters, but he got out of the jam, and even though he allowed the leadoff runner to reach and steal a base, he didn't let it bother him, and he got back-to-back saves with just the 1-run lead. And now, for Craig Kimbrel, you're looking at him and realizing he's only allowed 1 earned run in his last 17 appearances. Like, he has been really, really good, especially lately, out of the Oriole bullpen when he's been healthy and has been rested. And it's what I said at the beginning of the season. It's what I said when the Orioles signed Craig Kimbrel in the winter. He is still a very effective pitcher. He still gets a lot of strikeouts, and he is still, like, no doubt about it, a good reliever in Major League Baseball, and I'll say it, a good closer. That doesn't mean it's going to be fun to watch, and I said it many times. He's going to get the outs he needs more times than not, but it is going to be sometimes a disaster to watch, especially as a fan. That's pretty much what it's been this year. He's been very good. You don't have a lot of fun when you watch him pitch, but he's getting the results. And at the end of the day, at least for now, getting the results is what matters. That's what Kimbrel's been doing as he locked down that 2-1 win for the O's on Friday night. So they had the first 2 games. Next up was Saturday night on Fox. Hawaiian shirt night, sold out ballpark. Can they clinch the series? It was another nail biter, but they did get the W, and I'll tell you how they did it coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. For me, the most fun and exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Prize Picks is the easiest way to play. It's the #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. All you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And even though the finals are over, Stanley Cup and NBA, the hoops action doesn't stop with Prize Picks. Got the WNBA heating up, stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. You can get all their stat lines, plus, of course, Major League Baseball stats every single night of the week. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Again, it's Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And today's episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Tax Network USA. Here at Locked On Orioles, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team. Whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs, it's year-round. You know what else is year-round, though? Collection season. And just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garner your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. So don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A-plus rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or you finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. And be sure to mention Locked On Orioles at checkout, and you'll receive a $250 discount off their services at Tax Network USA. So the Orioles somehow, some way, even with all the walks from the bullpen, scraped by with the 2-1 win on Friday night. Put them up 2-0 in the series. They were looking to clinch the series win on Saturday. Beautiful night at the ballpark, sold out, City Connect Hawaiian shirts, David Rubenstein dancing on the dugout, and the Orioles pulled out another one. 6-5, the W on Saturday, their final score. And let's start with what went right. Well, what went right was Heston Kjerstad. Let me tell you right now, it is going to be very, very hard to consistently pull Heston Kjerstad out of this Oriole lineup. And specifically, it's going to be even harder to make a point that you should send him back down to AAA Norfolk at some point here, because he is doing right now, at least in a week, what Colton Cowser did in April. And that is get a regular-ish chance and produce so well that you can't take him off the roster, and you really can't take him out of the lineup too often. Now, of course, the big swing came in the 5th inning. Kjerstad up with the bases loaded and 2 outs. Orioles trailing 2-1. Ranger starter Michael Lorenzen on the hill, and Kjerstad delivers. A 1-1 pitch puts it just barely over the wall in right center field for his first career grand slam. The yard exploded. It put the Orioles up 5-2. 105 off the bat, 395 feet. Just had enough to get out of here. And it really just showed his strength. I mean, his last 2 homers, the one he hit the dead center earlier in the week, and then this one, I didn't think either of them off the bat were getting out, but he just has so much strength to will that ball over the fence. And it gave the Orioles their 60th home run in the month of June, which is a franchise record for the most home runs in any month for the Orioles. And they became just the 3rd Major League Baseball team ever to hit 60 home runs in one calendar month. The Orioles are leading the league in home runs. We know that. They are relying on the home runs somewhat, but they mash so much that it really does carry their offense. I mean, think about it. 60 home runs in a month. Now, the Orioles only had one off day, but still, 60 home runs in 29 games. The Orioles were averaging 2 home runs per game in the entire month. That is an absurd level of power. They hit number 59 earlier in the game with Anthony Santander, had a solo shot in the 2nd that tied the game at 1. It's been led by Santander. That gave him 13 home runs in the month of June. That was tied for the 2nd most home runs ever by an Oriole in a single calendar month. 15 is the record for the O's. 13 homers in a month as a player is ridiculous. And Santander did it. 60 home runs in a month is ridiculous. And guess what? Kjerstad had the big moment, the grand slam. It was incredible to see him do that. That wasn't all he did in this game. The Rangers did not get Heston Kjerstad out on Saturday. He walked, he was hit by a pitch, and he was intentionally walked later in the game, which actually worked out. It was 2nd and 3rd and 1 out. He was intentionally walked, and then they were able to retire the next 2 hitters to keep the Orioles off the board. But you're looking at a rookie who just came up on Monday again, and he's already being intentionally walked. That's how much of an impact Kjerstad has made so far since he returned to the Orioles. And Kjerstad did get the start on Sunday, and ho-hum, he went 2 for 4 with a single, a double, and an RBI. since he returned to the Orioles on Monday. He hasn't played every day. He's gotten a couple of days off, but he's in there most days and was in there against a lefty on Sunday. Heston Kjerstad is now 7 for 16. That is just shy of 500. He's got 2 doubles. He's got 2 home runs, 8 RBIs. He has been hit by a pitch once. He has walked 3 times and only struck out 3 times in this stretch so far. Those are ridiculous numbers since being recalled. And to be quite honest with you, he's played good defense in both left field and right field at Camden Yards. And I still don't think Kjerstad's going to play every single day. You got too many guys to get in there. You want Santander and O'Hearn in there. Maybe if something's going on with Ryan Mountcastle, who has not started the last 2 games, we'll talk about that in the next segment. If there's something there, then I do think Kjerstad could be in there every single day. But Mullins is heating up, had an amazing June. If there's a righty on the mound, Cedric Mullins is going to be in center field. And you want Cowser out there for the defense. His bat is a little bit better. Of course, you have Santander, O'Hearn, Mountcastle. It's tough to get him in there every day. And of course, Cowser and Mullins especially provide way more on defense out there than Heston Kjerstad does. But as I mentioned, this is how Cowser cemented a spot, and Kjerstad can do the same. And I think the tough part is here, like, Kjerstad's not going to play every day, but I think he's going to play most games at this point. And this is really tough for Kyle Stowers, because Stowers was hitting well in his bench role, was only sent down because Jordan Westberg was going to be out for a couple of days. They needed another infielder. Stowers was really the only guy they could send down, so they did to get Nick Maton back here. They ended up not really needing Maton. Westberg came back in a couple of days. By the way, Maton, who was DFA, did clear waivers, so he is staying in the organization and is back with AAA Norfolk. But it was just kind of a tough break for Stowers. And I thought, hey, you know, Maton will be here for a bit and then Stowers will come back up. What I didn't know is that the Orioles would eventually call up Heston Kjerstad. And now with Kjerstad hitting so well, Stowers is once again stuck in AAA because you're just going to play the hot hand. And you know what? That's okay, because Stowers is now officially eligible to be recalled, and it's just not going to happen unless there's another injury for now. You can play the hot hand. There's depth behind him. It's great depth. Maybe they do go back to Stowers, Norby, Mayo, whomever down the road. But this is Kjerstad's time right now, and you just ride the wave. When you got this much talent, you ride the wave of who's hot, and he can carry an offense when he gets going. Kind of doing it right now for the Orioles. Now, what went wrong in that 6-5 win? Well, it was once again the bullpen trying to hold on to this thing. Now, just like Friday night, they held on, but it was a little concerning again. Now, the bullpen had to cover 4 innings because Cade Povich only gave them 5, and they walked 3 batters. Now, none of those walks scored, so it wasn't as much of an issue, the walks on Saturday night. But the issue was the loud contact. Brian Baker came in the 6th. He did not bake. Everything came out burnt. He allowed a 2-run homer to Nate Lowe after the Heston Kjerstad grand slam. All of a sudden, it was again a 1-run game at 5-4. Jacob Webb allowed a solo homer to Adolis Garcia in the 8th, went from 6-4 to 6-5. The cushion was almost gone again. And even Cionel Perez, who came in to get out of the 8th inning, 2 on, 2 out, hangs a slider to Jonah Heim, who hits a ball to the warning track in right center field. Like, Perez almost gave up a 3-run homer to Heim. Luckily, Mullins ran it down to end the inning, keep the O's in the lead. Yeah, just a lot of hard contact off this bullpen, a lot of walks, a lot of hard contact. It was a little bit of a shaky weekend for the Orioles bullpen, I will say. But good thing was, and I mentioned, Craig Kimbrel, although he did walk 2 guys in the 9th inning, he got out of it. And in the midst of all that hard contact, the guy who had been struggling the most lately, Yennier Cano, who had the terrible outing Friday, well, he came in and got a 1-2-3-7. That ended up being huge for the bullpen on Saturday. So maybe he got things back on track, which is nice to see. And a shout out does go to Cade Povich, who made another start on Saturday. And listen, he wasn't at his absolute best, but he got through 5 innings and he kept the Orioles in it on Saturday night. Povich's final line, 5 innings, 2 runs, 5 hits, 3 Ks, no walks. He allowed 2 solo home runs. One was hit by Corey Seager in the 1st inning, and then one by Derek Hill, who then hit 2 home runs on Sunday and just massacred the Orioles. That Derek Hill homer was in the 5th that put the Rangers up 2-1. But otherwise, Povich, again, just avoided hard contact. Only 4 hard hit balls. 2 of them were the homers in those 5 innings. He did not walk anyone, which made it 5 consecutive Orioles starters to not walk a batter, which is a fantastic streak to have going. It was broken on Sunday. We'll get to that. But that's a great streak. And Povich just did what he does. Like, I don't really get it. He didn't miss bats basically at all in this game. It's really hard to have success at the big league level when you're not missing bats. 47 swings by Rangers hitters, 3 swings and misses on 47 swings. That could be a disaster. But he got 27 foul balls to go along with 12 called strikes, and then just a lot of balls in play that were not hit hard. And it's that four-seam fastball. The balls that were hit hard were off his off-speed. Corey Seager hit a hanging sweeper out. Derek Hill hit a hanging changeup out that was right down the middle. But nobody can hit his fastball. He hides it. He must hide that fastball so well behind him before he releases it. 13 foul balls on the fastball, despite it being his number one pitch, and only 4 balls hit in play. None of those balls in play off of Cade Povich's four-seam fastball were over 86 miles per hour in terms of the exit velocity. And on the season against Povich's fastball, it's just a 12% swing and miss rate. So guys make contact, but just an 88 mile per hour exit velocity on average, a lot of foul balls, and a 167 opponent batting average against his fastball. He didn't miss bats. He just has guys timing off just enough, especially with that four-seamer, because he's not firing it in there. It was averaging 92.4 miles an hour on Saturday night, but he has just enough deception on that pitch to frustrate hitters. You add in that the Rangers have not been hitting fastballs this year, and you have another solid start from Cade Povich and another win for the Orioles 6-5 on Saturday. So then they had their sights set on the mop. They've already mopped the Rays and the White Sox on the road this year. We're looking for their first home mop of 2024. Unfortunately, that did not happen. We'll tell you what went wrong in the Sunday night baseball loss to finish off the pod coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. Now, I know for some, it feels like the sports world kind of slows down in the summer, right? You got Stanley Cup finals are over. You've got the NBA finals are over. It's really kind of dominated by Major League Baseball and the WNBA at this point. And we do get the Olympics here coming up soon. I know we got some soccer going on, Copa America. Hopefully Team USA can figure something out. We got the Euros going on. That is all to say that I love watching sports. And although not as much is going on, there is still a lot going on. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer at FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And today's episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by the DK Law Group. When you need a law firm, do you want the legal runaround, or would you rather have a no-nonsense approach? Well, you get the latter with the DK Law Group. The DK Law Group specializes in real estate law, estate planning, business law, and family law. They're tech savvy. They treat their clients like family, and they focus on keeping your legal solutions simple. And they know that speed is key at the DK Law Group. By leveraging technology, the DK Law Group streamlines the process to serve you better and faster. So contact the DK Law Group today at dklawmd.com. And Locked On Orioles listeners can call today to schedule a 30-minute consultation for free when you mention the tagline, Empowering Legacies. So the Orioles had a chance to pick up the mop on Sunday night. Remember, a mop better than a sweep. Sweep is 3 games. Mop is winning all 4 games of a series, coined by a friend of the show, Jordan Schusterman of Cespedes Family Barbecue. But it wasn't in the cards on Sunday night for the Orioles. And quite frankly, that felt like a team that on the final day of just a rigorous June, 29 games in 30 days against all these amazing opponents, just felt like a team that was like, can we end it already? Not only that, but this Sunday night baseball game kind of screwed the Orioles over a little bit in terms of their travel. Now, it's great that they have an off day here on Monday. Finally, another off day. That is fantastic. That is huge, especially coming off Sunday night baseball to get an off day. Usually used to playing at 1:30 on Sunday. Now you got to play at 7. But the issue is the Orioles are flying to Seattle. They start a series on the road against the Mariners on Tuesday night. If they had a normal 1:30 home game on a Sunday, what would have happened is they would have probably flown to Seattle after the game. They would have gotten their sleep and then had an off day on Monday to explore Seattle and kind of rest and recharge for Tuesday. Instead, they will probably fly out, late here Sunday night to Seattle, sleep through most of the day on Monday, and then have to get up and it be a game day on Tuesday. That could screw a thing. So think about that if the Orioles come out a little slow on Tuesday. But they certainly came out a little slow on Sunday night. An 11-2 loss to the Rangers to finish up the series. The O's still do win the series. They get 3 out of 4. They are still sitting in first place. The Yankees ended up splitting a 4-game set with the Blue Jays this weekend. So the Orioles and Yankees are tied atop the AL East standings, but because the Orioles on the season are 5-7 against the Yanks, they have the tiebreaker. So technically, they are in first place at the moment, and the Orioles are 53-31 on the season now. Well, now what went right on Sunday night? Well, you could say Ryan O'Hearn getting 3 hits off a lefty in one game. So as I'm recording here, it's just after 10 p.m. on Sunday. I haven't seen any update on Ryan Mountcastle. Mountcastle has not started the last 2 games. Again, haven't seen anything for what exactly is happening. Doing some live checking here to see if we have any updates on Ryan Mountcastle. The update, Steve Molesky's got it from Masson, that Ryan Mountcastle was ill. That is the only thing we have right now. You hope that it was just something going around that he'll get over, and you hope it's not the vertigo popping back up that kept him out for a lot of time last season. But he did not start, came in as a pinch hitter on Saturday. Then you knew something was wrong Sunday because there was a left-hander on the mound in Andrew Haney, and Mountcastle crushes lefties. You know he's going to be out there. Unfortunately, he was not, so you worry that's the case. But it did open things up for the Orioles to have a little bit of a different lineup against lefties. And Brandon Hyde could have, just thrown Ramon Arias or James McCann out there and said, oh, let's get another righty in there. But instead, he gave Ryan O'Hearn a shot. O'Hearn's first start against a left-handed pitcher this season. And what does he do? He goes 3 for 4 overall, but 3 for 3 against the lefty Haney. O'Hearn coming in was only 2 for 15 with 2 singles, only 1 strikeout though, and then no walks against left-handers. He goes 3 for 3 with 3 singles against Haney. Now, only one of those 3 singles was hard hit, but one of them produced an RBI, got the O's on the board in the second inning. And he looked good up there. He looked comfortable. He could get to a breaking ball. He could get to a fastball. He wasn't reaching too much, wasn't chasing too much. It was really, really nice to see. And I don't think that's going to lead to like a bunch more starts against lefties for Ryan O'Hearn. But what I will say is they might feel comfortable in a couple of games down the stretch, starting him against a lefty if they need to. And also, it might give O'Hearn a better chance to maybe stay in a ball game. Say he's facing a lefty in the 6th or 7th inning, to keep him in there and know, hey, he might come up again in the 9th against a righty. You feel better about leaving him in against a left-hander. Now, he hasn't basically faced lefties at all. It's been one of the reasons I think he's been so good, because he only has to focus on righties. But if he can start to hit lefties, we've already seen Ryan O'Hearn unlock something different this year with his plate discipline, his ability to not strike out and still hit for power. If he can start to hit lefties, he's like a legitimate all-star, which, I mean, that would be scary if O'Hearn starts to hit lefties. Sunday was certainly a good start. What went wrong? We all know what went wrong. It was Cole Irvin, unfortunately, again. Cole Irvin on Sunday night for the second straight start just kind of looked like he was throwing batting practice up there again. Like, it was a rough watch. Final line, 3 2/3 innings, 5 runs, 5 hits, 2 Ks, 2 walks, a homer on 80 pitches. The Rangers were just all over him, just like the Guardians were all over him on Tuesday night. Really, these last 3 starts have been abysmal for Cole Irvin. Only 12 1/3 innings total in his last 3 starts, basically averaging 4 innings a start. And over those 12 1/3 innings, he's allowed 18 runs, 14 of them earned, on 20 hits, with 5 strikeouts to 4 walks in that time. Just basically throwing batting practice up there. And I said it after his start Tuesday against the Guardians that, look, the kind of pitcher Cole Irvin is, it isn't electric stuff. It's stuff with subtle movement. He has good command. He throws it on the corners, but he's always going to be a pitcher that is always towing the line between good, crafty lefty and guy who's throwing BP up there. And the nice part has been, for most of this season, he's been on that crafty lefty side. Before these last 3 starts, Irvin had a 3.03 ERA on the year, and he's basically been in the rotation all year. That has been fantastic. On the flip side, these last 3 starts, he has fallen into the wrong side. He is falling into the throwing BP, everything's over the middle of the plate, and getting crushed side of the line here. Now, I would still stick with my guns and say when Kramer comes back this week or next, I would still put Suarez in the bullpen and leave Irvin in the rotation for now. But I wouldn't be surprised if Cole Irvin is the guy that goes to the bullpen, or even if he's not now, Irvin would be the next guy on my checklist. Like if the Orioles at some point in July, hopefully add a starting pitcher before the trade deadline, Irvin, for me, at this point, if he keeps looking anything close to this, would be that guy who moves to the bullpen. And we've seen him have success in the Oriole bullpen as well, which gives you a little more confidence. Like, okay, he could still get some key outs in that role. But man, it does not look good right now. Luckily, it was, it's only been 3 starts. He was really good before that, willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, especially as a veteran lefty. But you can't have many more of these before the Orioles, which are already running out of pitching, have to make some sort of change. Now, the shout-outs to finish Sunday, a few guys. Shout out to Matt Crook, making his Oriole debut, was called up over the weekend because Corbin Burns went on the paternity list as his wife was giving birth this weekend. Congratulations to the Burns family for that. Corbin most likely will come back this week to make his start, and Crook, the funky lefty, will most likely go back to AAA. But I am just enamored with Matt Cook. Came over off waivers from the Yankees in the offseason. Only throws like 90 miles an hour with the sinker, but has this devastating sweeper, funky arm movement, strikes out a bunch of guys, has the numbers of a guy who throws 100 and can't command it. Instead, he throws 90. It's a crazy profile, and I'm very intrigued by it. Hasn't been amazing this year, and wasn't really amazing on Sunday. Shout out to Wyatt Langford as well, who hit a 3-run homer off of Matt Crook in the 8th inning of this game when he pitched. And Wyatt Langford, the rookie, hit for the cycle. First Major League Baseball player to hit for the cycle this year. They said it on ESPN, first cycle ever in the history of Sunday Night Baseball, so that was pretty cool. Langford, a talented rookie who got off to a slow start. Shout out to him for that. And then another Ranger, like shout out to Andrew Heaney for dominating in this game. Heaney went out there, 7 innings, 2 runs, 5 hits, 10 Ks, and no walks against the Orioles in this one. And I got to tell you right now, the Rangers, they got that win, but lost 3 of 4. This Texas team, the defending world champions, are 38-46 on the season. And remember, the American League is much harder to get into the playoffs than the crazy mushy middle of the National League is. The Rangers aren't out of it yet, but they're getting pretty close to that. And at the very least, even if they say maybe are tangentially in it, they could consider at least selling off their rental players, their impending free agents, and kind of buying and selling at the same time at the trade deadline to reload for next year. Andrew Heaney is a guy with a lot of playoff experience from last year, helping lead them to the World Series. He's having a good season this year. He just had an incredible start, as we saw at Camden Yards. He'd be a guy who is a rental who I would love to see in an Oriole uniform after the trade deadline. So maybe the next time we see him in Baltimore, it is pitching for the O's. And then last shout out has to go to Gunnar Henderson. Henderson had the 0 for 4, the golden sombrero with 4 strikeouts, all against Andrew Heaney. First time he had done that since the end of his first year in the big leagues in 2022. And it ended his on-base streak. 36 consecutive games on base for Gunnar Henderson. He did not make it to the Oriole record. That was snapped with the 0 for 4 on Sunday. I just did find it funny, though. He was gifted those cleats by Sunday Night Baseball with the Lego guy on them and the Legos on it and the logo. And after going 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts, he switched out of those cleats to his regular orange cleats. Now, Gunnar said after the game, it wasn't because he was struggling. It was because I think one of the Lego pieces had fallen off of one of the laces and it had made it a little awkward. So he took them off, but still was a pretty funny moment on the broadcast when he went out to shortstop after that 3rd strikeout and had switched out of those cleats. So yeah, a tough loss, right? It's always not fun to lose a blowout game on Sunday night, but the Orioles did win 3 out of 4 against a team that, although struggling, still did break their hearts last year and win the World Series. And so nice to get another series win. And next up for the O's, they hit the West Coast. Off day today, which is fantastic, and then to Seattle on Tuesday. So here is what the podcast is going to look like the rest of this week. Now, we are going to do a mailbag for tomorrow's episode. So please, please, please send in your mailbag questions if you want them answered on tomorrow's pod. You can tweet me at Locked On Orioles, not as much on Twitter. I was a little more active over the weekend, but even better is to put your mailbag questions in the YouTube comments of this video right here and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. Or you can email me, lockedonorioles@gmail.com with mailbag questions or any of your thoughts on the show. And we'll get to hopefully a good chunk of them on tomorrow's episode. Then, as I've mentioned before, because I do work a 9-to-5 job, it is very, very tough for me to stay as active as I usually am on the podcast when the Orioles are on the West Coast in the middle of the week. Tuesday night's game in Seattle, first pitch at 9:40 Eastern time. Wednesday night is at 10:10 Eastern time. Now, what's nice, have 4th of July off of my other job, so be able to stay up and record most likely after that Wednesday game, but the Tuesday game will be tough. So what will happen is We've got the recap here on Monday. You'll get the mailbag on Tuesday. Wednesday, I will not recap Tuesday's game because I just can't stay up that late and do that. Instead, we'll take a little look at some of the relief pitchers who could be out there on the trade market for the Orioles and who they could go and get at the deadline. Then on Thursday, I'll be back to recap games 1 and 2 with Seattle. And then Friday, I will recap game 3 because Friday is a day game in Seattle. So that's what the podcast looks like for the week. Again, get those mailbag questions in, and I'll be back tomorrow with that mailbag episode. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.